Hey everyone, happy Friday to you. It's Rob back in the abyss. And as promised, we are going to do an episode of What I Missed. The last time we did an episode like this, it was right after the 1989 year, going into 1990. So we covered 20 years of missed films. Well, today I have 30 years of missed films from 1990 to 2019. So here's a little bit of the issue. There's a bunch of movies that exist, and I think that's one of the cool things about these episodes, because I'm getting comments about it. Sad that it's ending. I'm gonna miss this. There is so many eras of film, and there's so many movies, and there's so many lost movies, and there's a couple in here that may be movies that you've never even heard of. And that's kind of my goal, and that's probably why I miss some of these movies, is because I want to make sure I cover movies that are movies that need to be seen, but also the top movies, and doing all of those different things throughout the years. And then I happen to just miss some that I really enjoy. And one of the things that I take quite a lot of pride in is, liking the non-popular, the non big name movies. As you've seen, if you watch these videos, I'm pretty much against the grain. So there are movies that I did not talk about, that I won't talk about today. And a couple examples of that is Christine, The Omen, Friday the 13th. I really enjoy those movies, but I think I'm going to save them for a horror or scary movie type episode. Maybe the one I'll do with Tyler that we talked about before. We'll see. I figured 22 movies is a lot to talk about. So that's where I'm at with these. And like I said, we're going to have more episodes because there's so much film to cover. There's so many different years to cover. We only covered the 50 years of my lifetime. We have a lot of movies we can go backwards with. So that's super cool. But anyways, so these are 22 films that I really liked that I missed. And I'm going backwards chronologically. So I'm starting with the most recent and going back to a couple movies in the 70s. So I'm going to start off with one, Jason Bateman, Bad Words. We've talked about him several times, Jason Bateman doing Jason Bateman. He does it really well. And we've also talked about when you have kids and adult humor and that kind of banter, it makes for a really funny comedy. He's great in this. It's a funny movie. I enjoy it. And like I said, it was mentioned in one of the lists. What about Bad Words? So I wanted to make sure that I mentioned it in this because I did enjoy it. And I do think it's funny. And actually, just like a month or so ago, we watched it with Tyler and his friends because they'd never seen it. They like Jason Bateman. That's how it started. They're like, hey, do you like Jason Bateman? I'm like, oh my God, have you guys seen Bad Words? And kind of spiraled into watching the film. Really good. Doesn't get old. Next up, I believe we're still in 2013 because that's Bad Words. Las Vegas. It's an okay film, but I'm pointing it out because of the cast. You have De Niro, Michael Douglas, Morgan Freeman, Kevin Kline. And when you have four heavyweights in a film, the film may be okay, but to watch the four of them banter and see true acting going on, it's worth a watch or two. I enjoy it because I like those actors, and you once again put them together. I'm going to enjoy the film. So I felt like it was worth a mention to you guys. Another film from 2012, I actually think is funnier than Las Vegas. Stand Up Guys, kind of the same thing. You got Al Pacino, Christopher Walken, and Alan Arkin, and they're three old buddies who were in a crew together and kind of getting together for one last hurrah. And it's a really good action comedy, and they're terrific in it. Very similar to Las Vegas, but a better film, a different type of film. Where Las Vegas, they're getting together for their friend's wedding. This one is they're getting together for one last caper, if you will, for lack of a better term. Really good, really enjoyable. All right. I talked about, I think, in our rom-com episode with Amy, Along Came Polly. I don't know how I missed this. It's terrific, funny. Most of us know it. To me, one of Ben Stiller's top films. He's hysterical in it. Philip Seymour Hoffman's hysterical in it. Alec Baldwin, hysterical in it. And Jennifer Aniston does a really good job as Polly. And, you have that good chemistry and that good timing and that that good humor, and it makes for a fun film. Just watch the basketball scene with Ben Stiller and Philip Seymour Hoffman and their conversation going back and forth while they're playing basketball. Hysterical. It's great. All right, next up, Jeff Bridges, Chris Cooper, Tobey Maguire, Elizabeth Banks, Seabiscuit. This is a great, great, great film. It's shot beautifully. It's a true story. It's based right down here in Southern California, the history of where Seabiscuit came from. Just really well done, well acted, a great story. We've talked about Jeff Bridges and how consistent he is. He's terrific. Chris Cooper, American Beauty, not a big favorite of mine, but he's so good in it. And he's so good as the trainer in that. Another consistent actor that you might have to look up his name, see his face, go, yeah, I know that guy. He's just so good. Very consistent. Excellent movie. It's a must watch. Private Parts, Howard Stern. This is a funny, great movie. I mean, it's just excellent and never gets old. There's some great bits. And here's what's cool about it. They actually used, for the most part, Howard Stern, Robin Quivers, Fred, all of his group play themselves in this. And I think that they really do a good job because they're just doing what they do on the radio. They're not really actors, but for this film, they do a really good job. But another reason I really like this film is this is the story of a guy who was what they used to label a shock jock. And him trying to make his way through all these small radio stations on his way to New York. Well, for many of those who don't know, before really getting in the acting world, my dad, RJ, was a disc jockey for 16, 17, 20 years, whatever it was, under the name Bob Shannon. And he was one of the early shock jocks in the 60s and 70s before a Howard Stern. And his story was working from station to station on his way to Los Angeles. So, for the earlier parts of my life, 2, 3, 4, 5 years old, we were traveling quite a bit until we got out here to California. And along the way, a little Robbie talking on the air with Wolfman Jack, right? You can hear Wolfman Jack in American Graffiti, legendary disc jockey, and being on the floor at 3 years old with the Harlem Globetrotters, Metal Arc Lemon and Curly Neal and, all of those guys. So the experiences that I really kind of have vague memories about, but just memories still, we're at those radio stations or traveling on the way to Los Angeles, a part of my life. So when I watch Private Parts, it kind of brings me back to that time. And I respect Howard Stern's climb to his success. And this movie does a really good job of giving us that story. All right. Dustin Hoffman, Robert De Niro, Wagged the Dog. This is a fun movie because, every, 10, 20 years, it kind of becomes relevant again. De Niro works for a president who had a affair and they're trying to cover it up, a la, Bill Clinton. And they hired Dustin Hoffman, who's a famous Hollywood director, to kind of create a war and create a story to distract from the real story. And like I said, as we go through time, you can see this movie and understand it for what it is. And it's funny because Dustin Hoffman, as this director, thinks this is his best work, and De Niro's like, but yeah, you can't tell people that this is a made-up thing. This has to be real. And Dustin Hoffman has a hard time with that because he's thinking this is my best work. But anyways, their banter is terrific. It's a good movie. It's not a great movie, but I think because of it being a presidential year and politics going on, it may be one that you might want to sit down and take a look at. All right. Next up, Johnny Depp, Christopher Walken, Nick of Time. This is a great movie, great movie, and a couple reasons why. Number one, it's filmed in real time. So at one point in the movie, Walken gives Johnny Depp this amount of time to get done what he needs to get done. And I'm trying to keep it vague because I don't want you guys to, I don't want to ruin it for you. But once that time starts, you are living those minutes in real time with Johnny Depp as it's counting down. It's really super cool. And you know what's funny? When you think of Johnny Depp, you think of the characters, Willy Wonka, Jack Sparrow, Edward Scissorhands, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there were several movies that he did more straight on as Johnny Depp. And you know what you see? You see all of those characters because it's him. It's one and the same. And he even says himself, when you guys watch that stuff, you see the makeup, you see the wardrobe, you see the hair, you see all that kind of stuff. He's always Johnny Depp. And you get to see him more straight on as Johnny Depp. And working with and across from Christopher Walken makes this a really good, I said great. It is a great film. I really enjoy it. And it's one of those under the radar films that you got to find and watch. All right, one that we also mentioned in the rom-com episode, Forget Paris, Billy Crystal, Deborah Winger. It's just a good, fun film. The people that are in the film have a good continuity and they banter well with each other. And you kind of will see through the movies we just talked about, but also the movies that we're going to talk about, that this is an ongoing theme of just good matches of good actors using each other, playing off each other, and doing what they need to do as actors. And, what's fun about this is Billy Crystal, his job in the movie is he's an NBA referee. So you get those elements on the court with the real athletes and him being a small guy, and you have Kareem, or you have, whoever the legends were in the 80s, play off of him, and it's really well done. Charles Barkley, one come to mind. Isaiah Thomas, like just the legends in this movie with him and in the story around it. It's really a fun romantic comedy, and like I said, in the rom-coms, it's a must-watch, and it was my favorite for that year. Once again, another one with an amazing cast, The Paper. They work for a kind of a tabloid paper, and Michael Keaton, married to Marissa Tomei. She's trying to pressure him for a better job, and he's battling between the loyalty of the paper or taking this better job. You also have Randy Quaid, Glenn Close, Robert Duvall. It's just a really strong, powerful cast, and a really good, fun story based around what the title is, The Paper. And it's one that you can sit down and really enjoy because of the acting, and the interaction and the conversation and all the stuff you get with movies with a heavyweight cast, whether it be a Breakfast Club or an Outsiders or Big Chill, movies like that, where it's just based on the continuity and the relationship of a group of good actors. Another great movie with a great cast, Postcards from the Edge, Shirley MacLaine, Meryl Streep, Gene Hackman, Dennis Quaid. Just a really good movie. Also based on Carrie Fisher's story, right? It was based on her book. And so the Meryl Streep character is loosely based on Carrie Fisher. And then the Shirley MacLaine is loosely based on Debbie Reynolds. And you kind of get the ups and downs of the things that she went through with a star mom, but then also the stuff she's going through as a star actress. A lot of cool scenes on the set, so as actors, this is really cool to kind of see some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes of making a film. And even still, for people who are not into acting, but just into movies, seeing that kind of stuff and seeing how movie magic is made is pretty cool. And you see some of those elements in this. And like I said, when you have a lot of good acting around it, it makes for a really strong film. All right, moving on. I think we're somewhere in, 89, I think is where we're at. Robert De Niro, Sean Penn, We're No Angels. This is actually a remake. They're escape cons and hiding out in a city, I believe in Canada, right up by the border. And they pose as priests, and Demi Moore is is the female character in this, but it really is about them and what they're dealing with and their banter and stuff. It's a good, once again, I'm going to use the same term, but kind of that under the radar comedy. I remember seeing this in the movie theater. You know, I was a big Sean Penn fan. I was a big De Niro fan. This comes out, and you know what? It doesn't get great scores, great ratings, but that tells me it's probably going to be a better movie than you expect. Because the ones like Shape of Water that they rank off the charts is crap, and then you get something like this and they rank it, you know, and it ends up being a pretty good, fun comedy. But once again, when you have good actors, Demi Moore is a good, you know, as the female lead, and you have that continuity, it makes for a really good, strong film for a comedy and for what it is as a late 80s comedy. All right, another one for from '89, another great cast: Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, Red Fox, Della Reese, Harlem Nights. And this movie is all about the banter. This movie never gets old. I love it, and I laugh every time I watch it. There's always parts. And look, I'm not one for overacting. I hate when they do that. But the scene in this where they kill the brother of Arsenio Hall, and he's going through the whole fake crying scene, which he's supposed to do. He's not really trying to cry. He's supposed to be over the top with his crying. But the way that it's used with everybody else and Eddie Murphy and the people and their energy, using that energy, makes the scene really funny. The scene where Eddie Murphy fights Della Reese, hilarious. The banter between Della Reese and Red Fox and Richard Pryor and Eddie Murphy and Red Fox. I mean, it's just boom, 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 boom. It's just comic. It's three tiers of legendary comics, from Red Fox to Richard Pryor to Eddie Murphy, and then you add in Della Reese, and it just is so much fun. And like I said, never gets old. It's always funny to me. All right, now we're into '88, a movie I can't understand for the life of me how I forgot this, because this is by far one of my favorite films of all time, and that's Biloxi Blues. Matthew Broderick, Christopher Walken. It is based on a play based off Neil Simon's life. Neil Simon wrote the play. Matthew Broderick actually did Biloxi Blues on stage. And he also did with Alan Ruck, who plays Cameron with him in Ferris Bueller, of course. But anyways, he tells a story about when he's on set or on stage doing the play. Bill Sadler, who is, you know, done a ton of stuff from Shawshank to Bill and Ted's, you know, stuff like that. Very successful career. Plays the army sergeant, and when he would do it night in and night out on stage, he would just scream in their face, and he would just have to scream back. There's this whole scene about where they answer with ho and not here and not yes sir, it's just ho, and he would just yell back ho. And then they get to the movie, and it's Chris Walken, and Chris Walken's like, when I say ho, I don't want, and he said all of a sudden you have to just go ho. And it's a great acting lesson because you have to use what you're getting. But he also said it was actually more terrifying with the non-screaming. And it just shows you that the presence of a Christopher Walken can be just as scary, if not scarier, than someone screaming at you. But just a fun story, a fun movie, great banter, good timing. There's some great acting in it, great scenes in it. It's a must watch. And like I said, it's absolutely up there, top 20 all-time favorite movies for me. All right, another one I didn't mention, The Untouchables. Not one of my favorite De Palma films, but still, you know, the cast with Kevin Costner, Sean Connery, Robert De Niro, Andy Garcia. And I like mob movies, and I like stories about the mob and Al Capone and all that kind of stuff. Elliot Ness. It's a good, fun story. And what's super cool is if you listen to some of the behind-the-scenes stories, you know, Andy Garcia talking about working with Sean Connery and how Connery was just like, you know, doing these scenes is not like, you know, creating the atom bomb, you know, just get in there and do it. You know, Andy Garcia says that from the waist up, sometimes he'd be dressed in the stuff that he's filming for his close-ups, and then the waist down, he's in his golf clothes, ready to go film his scenes and then go play golf. That Sean Connery just came on the set, did his job, and goes home. It's not overthought. And when you hear those stories and you get to see that kind of relationship with the acting, it makes for a good film. And then, like you all know, De Palma being one of my favorite directors, You know, this was one that I need to mention. Like I said, not one of my favorites, but definitely one that is worth a watch, and worth being in your catalog if you're a De Palma fan like myself. All right. 3 Men and a Baby. Another one where it's about the continuity. You know, Steve Guttenberg, Ted Danson, Tom Selleck, and then, you know, them dealing with a baby. It's really well done. The timing's really well done. The comedy is really well done. Nancy Travis is the female mother of the child. It does a great job. I'm a big fan of hers. And it just makes for a good, fun comedy. And it kind of gets lost because these guys are not superstar actors. But at the time, because of Cheers and, you know, the what's the one that Tom Selleck did? You know, with the red Ferrari, I can't think of it off the top of my head. But anyways, and then Gutenberg from Police Academy, you know, they were at the height of their careers when they filmed this. So, you know, at the time, big stars make this movie. Now kind of lost, and it's one to kind of go back and revisit and watch their banter and their comedy and see, you know, how good that they really were. You know, they did a good job at this, you know, period of time. So, like I said, a good comedy to watch. I couldn't remember if I talked about this one or not. I know I've talked about it in class. I kind of looked back on videos and stuff like that, and I don't recall talking about it. So if I have, you know, oh well. But if I haven't, heaven help us. This is a really good movie. You know, it's Kevin Dillon, Andrew McCarthy, Mary Stuart Masterson, Donald Sutherland. You know, it's them going to a Catholic school in the 50s, and the way that the priests disciplined back then and the way they had to deal with things, but at the same time trying to figure out how to fit in and deal. And, you know, then there's the love story between Andrew McCarthy and Mary Stuart Masterson, which is kind of taboo because Andrew McCarthy is being raised to be a priest. And so you have all these sub kind of stories within the main story. But there's just such an honesty and realism to them being at the Catholic school. I went to Catholic military school for 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I had teachers that were nuns. They weren't, you know, brothers. They used to be brothers at some of these older schools in the 50s, kind of like monk types, you know, with the brown robe, the whole 9 yards. But when I was in Catholic school, we had nuns as our teachers, so it wasn't as strict. It was strict, but it wasn't as strict. Being a military school made it stricter because then we had our military officers, you know, who, you know, our major, our sergeant, the ones who ran the thing as adults, but then also the kids who were in charge. And so I appreciate a film like this because I can relate to it, at least from the Catholic school part of it. And I really do enjoy this movie. For me, it never gets old. It's got a lot of great moments to it, and it's a fun watch. All right. Target, Gene Hackman, Matt Dillon, two of my favorites. Matt Dillon at this period of time, and of course Gene Hackman all time. And you put them in a movie. They're a father and son, and they are in Europe having to chase down something. And once again, I'm going to be vague with this, so you guys get to watch it, enjoy the film. But they're kind of estranged with each other, and they're kind of put back together in order to take care of what they need to take care of. And like I said, Matt Dillon is a superstar at this time, and then you have a legendary actor in Gene Hackman. You put them together, and it makes for a really good film. And this is probably a film that most of you have not even ever heard of. And that's why it's just like We're No Angels. These are movies that you must watch because they get lost, and they're timeless because of the actors that are in them, because of the stories, and because there's so many movies that get lost. Love it. Love the acting. Check it out. All right, down to our last few here. We talked about this in class the other night. Sam Elliott, Cher, Eric Stoltz, Mask, true story, kind of like The Elephant Man, but different, more modern. Kid born with that kind of disease with the bones structure in his head and face, etc. And Eric Stoltz does a phenomenal job as Rocky Dennis. That was the young man's name. You can look him up. He existed. And the way they did the makeup, they are pretty close to making Eric Stoltz look the way Rocky did. It's really consistent. Cher does a phenomenal job as his mom. Sam Elliott as the love interest of the mom is just phenomenal. Very consistent, right? We talked about that in class the other day with the raspy voice, the way he sounds, the way he is. Very consistent Sam Elliott, no matter what he's in. Just a terrific, awesome, emotional roller coaster of a film. And as much as I love Elephant Man, I can't wait for it in September to come out on Criterion. I love this film, and it's a must watch. And I know I keep saying that, but that's why these are on these lists, because these are must watch films in my opinion, at least one time, and for some of these many, many, many times. All right, a good comedy, 1980, Blues Brothers. John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, once again, the banter, the connection, the chemistry, right? They were great on Saturday Night Live together. They were great in this, and, if you really want to understand John Belushi, I was watching an interview with Kevin Bacon talking about when they were filming Animal House, and he would fly to Oregon, do 3-4 days of Animal House, fly to New York, do Saturday Night Live, fly back to Oregon, fly back to New York, and he was doing that. I mean, he was just going at this period of time, right? And then with the Blues Brothers, taking a castmate from Saturday Night Live and putting them together in this film, it's really fun. It's really good. Their banter's fantastic, and that scene alone with the nun, where they're sitting there, and the whole ruler scene and stuff like that. If you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about. It's hysterical. If you haven't, you'll know once you watch it. But a good, fun comedy for the early 80s. All right. 1976, Kramer versus Kramer. Dustin Hoffman, Meryl Streep, two heavyweights getting divorced and basically fighting for the rights of who's gonna, have the kid. And it's powerful, and it's tear-jerking, and it's ups and it's downs, and it's just a great, great film. Quick tidbit about this film. Dustin Hoffman and Meryl Streep were not the first choices. The first choices were James Caan, who was hot from Godfather and other films. And then Meryl Streep, the role for that was going to be Kate Jackson, who was in the middle of doing Charlie's Angels. Unfortunately, Kate Jackson could not do it, or fortunately, right? So then they brought in Meryl Streep. James Caan turned it down, thought it sounded like crap, give it to Dustin Hoffman. The rest is history. And it goes to show you sometimes things work themselves out. You may not be the first choice. You may not even be the second or third choice. But if you do your job and do things right, you can be the perfect choice. And that's what they are. They're perfect in this. The kid does a great job. It's a really good acted, powerful film. This is a must watch just from the legacy of the film and the legacy of the actors. It's just terrific. All right. So my last one for 1975 is Brian De Palma's Obsession. There are movies that Brian De Palma has done. You can see that he had a Alfred Hitchcock influence in his films, and this is kind of his Vertigo, if you will. Cliff Robertson, John Lithgow. It's a really good film. I love Vertigo, and then of course I love De Palma, especially in these early years. So you give me a movie like Obsession, which once again you guys probably have never heard of, and sign me up. This is awesome. It's a great film. It's De Palma at his best, right up there with Carrie, Body Double, Blowout, Dress to Kill, etc. It's terrific. There's another one, and I haven't purchased it yet, called Raising Cain, which is kind of his version of Psycho, and you kind of get that Hitchcock feeling to that film as well. Although I don't think Raising Cain is quite as good as Obsession. I kind of prefer Obsession, but I'm working on trying to get as many of the De Palma films, especially the early ones, as I can. So, anyways, there is 22 films from 1975 through about 2013 that I missed, and probably some ones that you've never heard of, and now that you can add to your list. So that will officially conclude my 50 top films in my first 50 years. And like I said, no reason to get discouraged or disappointed or anything else, because we will start venturing into horror films, the 40s, the 30s, silent films, perhaps. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. But there's a lot to go through. So there's a lot of movies to talk about, but also we'll have episodes about technique. We'll have episodes about different things with acting like we had previous to this. So we have a lot to do still, but for those who are watching purely for the films, stay tuned because there's more to come. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and we will see you sometime next week. I'm going to try to do 2 episodes a week, like I said, so maybe Tuesday or so. All right? Take care, you guys.